50 Apache warriors sat still on their horses, making a perfect circle around a boy's ripped tent at dawn, each one holding something different in their rough hands. Some held blankets made by hand, others had wooden things they carved, dried meat, or special stones. None of them said a word. They just waited quietly like they were part of a special event the boy didn't get. Malachi Brooks pushed his face against the tent flap, his 14-year-old brain trying hard to figure out what he saw. Yesterday, he had nothing but a donkey that wouldn't listen and a hungry belly. Yesterday, he was just another kid wandering around that Apache warriors would usually stay away from or scare off from their land. The weirdest thing wasn't the circle of warriors. It was what each Apache did when they looked at him. They would put their gift on the ground, touch their chest once like they were showing respect, and then go back to waiting quietly, like they were following old rules Malachi never knew about. But the boy remembered something else from yesterday, something that made his chest feel tight with mix-up feelings. When the Apache warrior took his donkey and rode toward the mountains, the man whispered 3 words in his own language before disappearing into the hot desert. 3 words that must have been strong enough to bring a whole group of warriors to treat a homeless white boy like he did something amazing in their tough world. The Apache's last words sounded like a prayer, but now they felt like a clue to why 50 of the scariest warriors around were treating him with the kind of respect they give their own leaders. And as the morning sun got higher, showing the cool war paint and special feathers on each warrior in the neat line, Malachi figured out that giving away his only thing yesterday didn't just save one guy's life, it somehow got him a spot in Apache ways that he didn't even know were real. Something that would make him pick between the white world that left him behind and a red world that now wanted him as part of them. The sun had been super mean for 3 days in a row, turning the desert into a hot oven that cooked everything it touched. Malachi Brooks wiped sweat from his head as he led his donkey, Stubborn Pete, toward the faraway hills where he hoped to find some shade and maybe water. At 14, he had learned that hope was often the only thing a kid without a home had in this rough place. That's when he saw the man lying next to the red rocks. The Apache warrior was not moving. His dark hair stuck with dried blood, his breathing weak and hard. His horse was gone. Malachi's first thought was to keep walking in this area. Getting mixed up with Apache meant getting into danger that could end his life. But something about how the man's chest went up and down, barely noticeable in the super hot air, made the boy stop. "Mister," Malachi called out, his voice breaking a little. The Apache's eyes opened a bit, dark and not focused. He tried to talk, but only a rough sound came from his dry throat. Malachi looked around, feeling desperate. The closest water was miles away, and this man wouldn't last another hour in this heat without a way to move. The choice should have been really hard. Pete wasn't just Malachi's donkey. He was his way to stay alive, his only way to carry stuff, find water, and survive in the wild. Losing Pete meant losing it all. But as Malachi looked at the dying stranger, something stronger than just wanting to survive kicked in. "Can you ride?" he asked, though he could see the man was hardly awake. With a ton of effort, Malachi helped the Apache get on Pete's back. The warrior was heavier than he thought, and the boy had trouble keeping him up. Once on, the man seemed to find some hidden power. He looked down at Malachi with eyes that suddenly looked clearer, more sharp. "Why?" the Apache whispered in broken English. Malachi shrugged, trying to act normal, even though this was huge what he was giving up. "Because you need him more than I do right now." The warrior looked at the boy's face for a long time. Then, in a voice you could barely hear over the desert wind, he said 3 words in his own language that Malachi didn't get, but felt were important. The sounds seemed to mean a lot more than just words. With that, the Apache made a click sound, and Pete started walking toward the mountains. Malachi watched until they went away behind the rocky parts, wondering if he just did the nicest thing ever, or if he just made sure he'd die by helping someone the white people saw as an enemy. It got dark, and Malachi got ready to sleep on the hard ground without his blankets, which were on Pete's saddle. He couldn't stop thinking that something had changed for good. The Apache's words kept playing in his head, and he stared at the stars, wondering what magic those strange sounds might have. He would find out soon. Malachi woke up to total quiet. Not the normal quiet of desert morning, but the weird stillness when danger is close. He stayed still inside his tent, listening for any noise that might say what's wrong. Then he heard the soft sounds of horses breathing. Lots of horses. He looked through a hole in his quick-made shelter, and his heart stopped. Apache warriors were all around his camp in a perfect circle, on horses with paint, their faces marked with special designs he had only heard about in scared stories around fires. Each warrior held something in his hands, and their eyes were on his simple tent. Of them, maybe more. At the front of the circle sat an older Apache with gray in his long hair and scars that told of lots of fights. His being there showed power that made the other warriors like parts of him. This had to be a chief, and Malachi wondered if he was about to be caught, hurt, or just killed for helping one of them. But something didn't fit with that idea. These warriors weren't set up to attack. They sat like they were at a holy event, and each one held what looked like gifts. Malachi got brave and stepped out. The whole circle looked at him, and he felt the heavy stare of 50 pairs of eyes watching everything he did. But there was no meanness in their looks. Instead, he saw something that mixed him up even more. Respect. The gray-haired chief moved his horse forward a bit. When he spoke, his English was careful but easy to hear. "You are the boy who saved Nolan Graves." It wasn't a question. Malachi nodded, unable to talk. "Nolan Graves is my nephew, son of my sister. Yesterday he was dying. Today he lives because of your sacrifice." The chief stopped, looking at Malachi's face. "Do you know what it means when a white child gives his life spirit to save Apache?" "Blood!" Malachi shook his head, his mouth dry as desert sand. "It means the spirits have spoken. They have shown us that not all white men are enemies. That honor can exist in the smallest heart." The chief pointed to the warriors around him. "These are the bravest men of 3 Apache bands. They come to witness the boy who proved our elders wrong about your people." Another warrior spoke, younger, but with the same power. "The white settlers call us savage. They say we have no honor, no gratitude, but Apache remember those who show true heart." Malachi looked along the line, starting to get that this wasn't a fighting group at all. It was something way bigger and way more risky for other reasons. "What do you want from me?" he managed to ask. The chief smiled, and for the first time, Malachi saw warmth in those tough features. "Want? Boy, we have come to give, not take. But first you must understand what your kindness has started." But before, the chief could explain more. The sound of riders coming filled the morning air, and these new ones were definitely not Apache. The riders coming got there fast and hard, dust like smoke behind them saying trouble. Malachi looked against the morning, light, and counted 8 men, all with guns, all riding like they thought they'd find a big fight. Sterling Maddox led them, his old face serious like he expected bad stuff. Behind him were other settlers and ranch workers from nearby, men who had spent years seeing Apache as just problems for their money and safety. "Sweet Jesus," Maddox said under his breath as he saw what was happening. Kids surrounded by a war party. The Apache warriors stayed still, but Malachi could feel them change a little. Hands moved closer to weapons. Horses moved their feet, and the morning air got heavy with the chance for fighting. "Hold your positions," the gray-haired chief said quietly in his language, though his words were clear enough that Malachi got what they meant, even without knowing the words. Maddox and his men stopped their horses about 50 yards away. Close enough to fight, but far enough to run if needed. The settler lifted his rifle a bit, not really pointing, but showing what he meant. "Boy!" Maddox called out. "Walk toward us slowly. Don't make any sudden movements." Malachi felt stuck between two worlds that were going to clash. The Apache came to honor him, but the white settlers saw only a possible big fight starting. "I'm all right," Malachi called back, his voice breaking with nerves. "They're not here to hurt anyone. Like hell they're not." One of Maddox's men spit. 50. Apache don't show up for a peaceful talk. The chief moved his horse forward one step, enough to make every settler's gun point his way, but instead of fighting back, he spoke in clear English that went across the desert morning. "We come in peace, to honor the boy who saved Apache life. Your weapons are not needed here." "Apache peace," Maddox said, serious. "Usually means everyone else dies. Boy, you get over here right now." But Malachi found himself unable to move. Something in the chief's way, something in the respectful way the 50 warriors set themselves up, told him that walking away now would be more than just leaving the Apache. It would be leaving something important about himself. "They brought gifts," Malachi said, his voice getting stronger. "They came to thank me for helping one of their men." "Gifts?" Maddox laughed rough. "Son, the only gift Apache give is a quick death if you're lucky." The tension got tighter with each word, and Malachi realized that his simple, nice act had put him in the middle of a fight that could turn bad any second. Both sides had weapons. Both sides didn't trust, and both sides seemed ready to fight for what they thought was right. But before anyone could decide to start the fighting, a new voice cut through the morning air. Nolan Graves showed up on the hill like a guy from yesterday's memory, riding Pete the donkey with quiet pride. The Apache warrior looked way stronger than when Malachi last saw him. His hurts fixed with old ways, and he sat straight with better health. The coming of the man Malachi saved seemed to make everyone stop. Cowboys and Apache watched as Nolan led the donkey right to the middle of the face-off, putting himself between the two groups with the calm of someone who wasn't scared of either. "Lower your weapons," Nolan said in clear English, talking to Maddox and his men. "You point guns at ceremony of honor, not war council." "Ceremony?" Maddox kept his rifle ready but didn't point it straight. "What kind of ceremony requires 50 armed warriors?" Nolan got off Pete with slow moves that showed he was still getting better from his hurts, the kind that happens when white child saves. Apache life without asking for reward, when boy gives only possession to stranger who could be enemy. He walked toward Malachi leading the donkey by its rope. "Yesterday this boy found me dying in desert. He had choice. Save his own life or save mine. He chose mine." The gray-haired chief spoke up, his voice going across the tense space. In Apache tradition, such sacrifice creates sacred bond, not just between two people, but between peoples. Sacred bond, one of Maddox's men laughed mean. "It's just a boy being foolish?" "No," Nolan said strong. "Boy showed courage that many grown warriors lack. He proved that honor exists in white hearts, just as it exists in Apache hearts." Nolan reached into a leather pouch and took out something that made several cowboys step back surprised. It was Pete's lead rope, but attached to it was a small medallion carved from turquoise and silver. "Sacred debt must be repaid," Nolan announced, holding the rope toward Malachi. "But gift creates new responsibility." Malachi reached for Pete's rope, feeling the weight of the medallion in his palm. "What kind of responsibility?" the chief answered, before Nolan could. "Responsibility to be bridge between our peoples, to show others that peace is possible when honor meets honor." Sterling Maddox lowered his rifle a little, though his face still looked doubtful. "And what exactly does that mean? For the rest of us? "It means," the chief replied, "that this boy has become protected by Apache law. Any who harm him harm the entire tribe." But before anyone could really get what that meant, the sound of more horses coming filled the air again. This time, though, the dust was different, bigger, more set up, and with the sound of army stuff. "Territorial militia," Maddox said low, knowing the coming group. Someone told about the gathering. As the official guys came over the hill, Malachi realized that his simple, nice act had put him in the middle of big territory stuff he never knew about. The territorial militia came with the neat lines of real soldiers, their blue clothes and shiny, gear different from the old clothes of both cowboys and Apache warriors. Captain Hayes, a man whose gray beard told of many fights out here, looked at the weird group with careful thinking, like someone who knew looks can trick you into danger. "Stand down, all parties," Hayes ordered, as his 20 soldiers spread into a line to protect. By territorial authority, this assembly is under official observation. The gray-haired Apache chief moved his horse forward a bit, keeping the calm pride. That was in everything he did. "We conduct sacred ceremony, not war council. White soldier has no authority over Apache tradition." "Sacred ceremony or not," Hayes said, firm. "Armed warriors gathered near territorial settlements requires explanation." Sterling Maddox took the chance to tell his side. "Captain, that boy there. Helped an Apache yesterday and now they've surrounded him. Could be planning to take him hostage or use him for some kind of leverage against the territory." But Nolan Graves stepped forward, still holding Pete's lead rope. "Captain Hayes, I know. Your reputation is fair man. Will you listen to truth before making judgment?" Hayes nodded short. "Speak your truth, but make it quick. Yesterday I was dying in desert. No water, no horse, no hope. This white boy found me and gave his only possession, this donkey, to save my life. He asked for nothing, expected nothing, sacrificed everything for a stranger who could have been his enemy." The captain's old face showed the first bit of interest, and this ceremony, the chief answered with quiet power. When Apache receives, such gift from white person tribe must respond. These 50 warriors represent 3 bands. Each comes to honor boy's courage to offer gifts that show our respect. Gifts. Captain Hayes looked at the warriors more close, seeing for the first time that each held something in his hands rather than weapons. Food, blankets, tools, horses, Nolan explained. Things that help boy survive since he gave away his survival for Apache life. One of the younger warriors spoke in English with a strong accent. Boy proved white hearts can hold honor. This changes how Apaches see all white people. Hayes was a guy who got the big picture stuff of what he heard. You're saying this boy's action could improve relations between Apache and territorial settlers? More than improve, the chief replied. Could bring peace that has been impossible for many seasons. Captain Hayes looked at the nervous faces around him. Suspicious cowboys, proud Apache warriors, and one mixed-up boy in the middle. His next choice could either calm a bad spot or make it into the kind of fight that would bring more soldiers and more hurt to the area. "Very well," he said. "Finally, this ceremony will proceed under territorial observation, but any sign of hostility from either side, and my men will intervene with full force." As the tension started to let up a bit, the Apache warriors began to move their horses into a more official line near Malachi's tent. The ceremony started with the gray-haired chief getting off and walking to Malachi's tent with slow, careful steps. In his rough hands, he carried a pretty woven blanket colored in deep reds and blues that looked like the desert sunrise. "I am Gideon Nash, chief of the mountain band," he said, putting the blanket carefully on the ground near Malachi's feet. "This belonged to my grandmother. It has kept 3 generations warm through harsh winters." The serious feel of the moment hit everyone there, cowboys, soldiers, and Malachi too. This wasn't just giving stuff. It was a ceremony with deep meaning that made even the most doubtful people show respect. The second warrior came up, a younger guy with fancy beadwork on his clothes. "I bring 2 horses," he said in careful English, pointing to a pair of great animals being led by other Apache. Strong horses for boy who showed strength of heart. One by one, the 50 Apache warriors gave their offerings: dried meat that would feed Malachi for months, hand-carved tools that would help him build shelter, leather clothing that would protect him from bad weather, silver ornaments that meant riches in Apache, ways, seeds for planting crops, even weapons, a bow with a full quiver of arrows, knives with bone handles, and a tomahawk with special marks. But the gifts weren't just useful things. They meant something way more important: acceptance into a group that had seen all white settlers as enemies before. Each gift carries meaning, Nolan explained to the watching people. Horse means freedom to travel safely through Apache lands. Weapons mean trust that boy will not use them against our people. Food means he will never starve, while Apache remember his kindness. Sterling Maddox watched what was happening with growing surprise. That's more wealth than most homesteaders get in years of hard work. Captain Hayes nodded. Yes, the boy's gone from owning nothing to having enough to start anywhere in the territory. As the ceremony went on, Malachi felt swamped by how big this was. Yesterday, his biggest worry was finding food for another day. Now, Apache warriors were giving him the start of a whole new life. But the most important gift came last. Gideon Nash came back to stand before Malachi, this time with a small leather pouch that seemed to hold something special. Final gift is not object, the chief said serious. Final gift is promise. Any white man who harms boy who saved Apache blood will answer to all 3 bands. You are now protected by warrior's oath that extends beyond tribal boundaries. The heavy feel of that protection came over Malachi like the warmth of the blanket at his feet. He was no longer just a kid without a home trying to live in a mean place. But as the last gift was put down, faraway dust clouds said their peaceful ceremony was about to face its biggest test yet. The coming dust cloud showed Logan Briggs and 12 men with lots of guns riding fast toward the ceremony spot. Unlike the careful way of the militia, these riders came with clear bad plans, their weapons out and their faces full of the hate that had started fights out here for years. "This ends now," Briggs yelled, as his men made a scary line facing the Apache warriors. "No savage ceremony is taking place on territorial land. Captain Hayes right away put his soldiers between the 2 sides that might fight. Stand down, Briggs. This ceremony is going on under territorial authority." "Authority?" Briggs spit. "Captain, you're letting 50 armed Apache gather close to our homes. This is how big fights start." Sterling Maddox, who had stayed pretty quiet during the Apache ceremony, suddenly talked. "Briggs is right, Captain. We can't let feelings make us ignore the danger these warriors are." The Apache warriors answered the meanness by changing their spots a bit, hands closer to weapons while keeping the proud way of the ceremony. Chief Gideon Nash stayed calm, but his dark eyes followed every move of the coming threat. "There will be no violence here," Nash said in English, clear for all. "We came to honor courage, not to spill blood." "Honor?" Briggs laughed rough. "The only honor Apache get is taking scalps and burning homes." But before the face-off could get worse, Malachi stepped forward. The boy, who had been amazed by the ceremony, suddenly found power he didn't know he had. "Stop," he said, his young voice breaking through the tension. "Mr. Briggs, these men came to thank me for saving one of their own. They brought gifts, not weapons of war." "Boy, you don't understand what you've started," Briggs growled. "By helping that Apache, you've made them think they can go freely through our land. Maybe they should be able to," Malachi said back, his voice getting stronger. "Maybe if we treated them like people instead of animals, there wouldn't be so much fighting." The simple, true words from the boy seemed to touch even some of Briggs's men, who looked at each other not sure. But Briggs stayed the same. "Captain Hayes," Briggs went on, "I demand you arrest this boy for working with hostile Indians and break." Up this war party right now. Hayes looked at everything in front of him. 50 Apache warriors who had stayed perfect, even with people poking them. A boy whose nice act had made a chance for peace like never before. And a group of settlers whose fear and bad thoughts threatened to wreck something good for the whole area.